Hey guys, welcome to the channel. I wanted to do a quick video on contamination OCD because I haven't covered that topic in a very long time, and I think we really need to talk more about contamination OCD because it's a theme that has so many different aspects, and I think there's so much about it that doesn't get talked about enough in conversations about OCD. There are nuances which I personally have not seen being covered enough on the internet. So I thought that I would bring some insights from my own journey with contamination. As always, if you want to come in for coaching with us, or if you want to know more about our services and want to consider getting help from us, you can click the link in the description below. That will take you to our WhatsApp chat, and you can get in touch with one of us coaches today. So I want to talk about one of the biggest mistakes, which is essentially also one of the biggest compulsions that contamination OCD sufferers do, which is trying to trace exactly where the contamination is going, trying to map the trail of what objects are touching what, who is sitting where, what things are physically interacting with each other, all of that. And that's all to do with essentially you compulsively keeping track of making sure that you know what you can and cannot touch, right? And it's like you will see two family members, like one will be passing I don't know, a glass to another one, and you'll be watching exactly how their hands interact, how their hand touches the glass, how their hand touches the other person's hand. And you will also remember that, oh, this glass was also on that table at that spot. So that means that that new person who is holding the glass, if they touch the glass from the bottom, both their hands will be contaminated. Or if the glass touches their clothes or something like that, then that is contaminated as well. And then it's like, okay, then if they touch the bottom of the glass and then they touch the TV remote with the same hand, then the contamination has spread to that. And then if the TV remote is then put on the sofa, then the sofa is contaminated from that specific spot. And then if my father sits on that spot, then obviously like his clothes are contaminated. And if he goes to his bed, or if he sits with the same clothes in the car, then the car gets contaminated. No, then I can't drive that car. Or if I drive that car, I'll have to first wipe the seat, and then I'll have to sit in the car. But wait, my dad also put his wallet in his back pocket, and when he was taking out his wallet, he must have touched the part of his pants where the pants interacted with the sofa, where that remote was. So you're essentially trying to keep track of exactly where the contamination started from and to what extent it has spread. That is one of the biggest compulsions, and hence the biggest mistakes that contamination OCD sufferers are making. Why? Because it is all that element of control, it's all that element of certainty, and it's all that element of not wanting to sit with even the slightest amount of risk that something may happen, or you may do something wrong, or you may touch something wrong, right? This correlates with some of the core fears with contamination OCD, which are, yes, again, the fear of losing control over essentially what gets contaminated or not. But I think another big one that people miss is the fear of being overwhelmed. Because the reason that you want to keep track of where it's going is because in your mind it's like it's spreading, and then the internal panic is also rising, because it's like, okay, at first it was just one object that was contaminated, but now because it's spreading, now there's two and three and four, and oh no, like now there's like 50 things that are contaminated, and I cannot like sanitize and clean every single one of those surfaces, because if I try and do that, not only will I go crazy, but also like some of these things are not even cleanable as well. Like, what do I even do with that? Like, if there's like a very important paper, for example, that is contaminated, what are you going to do? Put sanitizer all over it? No, that paper is going to get ruined. It's going to get like shredded, or it can't really be cleaned. Or what if like the text on it starts to like haze out or something like that, and you need that document? What if it's like a document from the government that you cannot discard or whatever? So therefore then you have to keep it as it is, and you can't ruin it. So there's so many risks that come with that. So the fear of then being, because the thought process is that if this contamination spreads so much, I'm going to be surrounded by it constantly, and there's going to be no escape, and I'm going to be cornered, and then I'll have nowhere to go, and then life will be a trap, and I will be caged, and it'll be a terrible life. So the fear of being constantly, perpetually, forever overwhelmed is going to be there, and that's something I think that a lot of people miss, and that's why they are trying to control like the trail of contamination. Some of the things I did for myself as mini exposures throughout my recovery journey was also that, let's say if there was again some exchange of objects that was happening between people, or I could see that, I don't know, my a family member was holding a box, and that I knew that that box was perhaps in my mind contaminated or whatever, and I also knew that that box was about to be put on, let's say, a table, I would deliberately like just not look at where that box was being put on the table, and put myself in that spot of uncertainty as to where that box had touched. Because if I knew that if I looked at it, and if I knew where that box was being put, I will not be able to forget it. And it's just going to be etched in my mind. And every time I'll be passing that spot on the table, I'll be either avoiding it, or I'll be, or I'll be trying to overthink, should I put something here or not? Can I touch this or not? Etc. So just as an exposure to push myself in that uncertainty zone as well, I would at times just not look, and just try and stay with that uncertainty of whatever it was. And then, the next time I would essentially be on the table, instead of then avoiding the table, I would still interact with the table, I would touch it, or I would put things on it, thinking that, oh, I don't know where that box was put on the table. So I would go with that risk then, so that would help with a little bit with going with that uncertainty. At the same time, sometimes I would make myself look as well, because the other side of the coin is also that if I know exactly where the box is being put, I won't be able to unthink it. So the fear attached to that is, what if I'm always going to know where the contamination is, and no matter how much I clean it, no matter how much I sanitize it, I will not be able to unthink the contamination, and then I will always be reminded of it. So the fear of having the reminder of the contamination forever is also like a big one. So sometimes I would also then make myself watch as well. So it was a mix of both that I had to do. It wasn't that, okay, I'm not going to watch, because at some point I could also see how that was becoming a little bit compulsive as well, because it was like, no, because I don't want to think about the contamination at all. But no, I needed a little bit of the exposure of thinking about the contamination and being a little hyper aware of it and being uncomfortable about it, right? So it was a mix of both those things. But ultimately, what you have to look at is, again, the fear behind it. It's the fear of like not having certainty over whether something is contaminated or not, but at the same time it's also the fear of always noticing and being aware, in fact hyper aware of the contamination as well. So you can see that one little compulsion of tracking and mapping exactly where the contamination is going is being linked to so many different fears. It's a fear of it's a fear of losing control over your environment and essentially your life. It's a fear of being perpetually and forever overwhelmed. It's a fear of also being exhausted and tired, because for me it was that if I am constantly surrounded by and overwhelmed by the spread out contamination, I'm going to be always tired by running away from it. It's a fear of uncertainty, and it's also the fear of being hyper aware of the contamination. I almost forgot that point. So I just wanted to make a small, short 10-minute video on this, because I think it's one of those, yes, I think it's talked about, this compulsion is talked about, but I don't think that the beliefs and the fears behind it are highlighted enough. So you really need to look at those fears and beliefs behind it and break those down as well separately. And that's where you're going to start like maybe shaking loose that urgency to do the compulsions, and also be able to see that whatever your worst case scenario is, by seeing the logical framework of how it's going, you will be in a better position to redirect your life in the direction of rational thinking, acceptance, and recovery. So I hope you enjoyed this, and ask me any questions you want, and I'll be happy to answer and make more videos. Bye.